This is Dan, and this is the Napkin Academy. Today's lesson, what color is your pen? Otherwise known as the black, yellow, red pen self-assessment exercise. When it comes to visual problem solving, whether we think we can draw or not, all of us fall across, I think, a very simple spectrum. There are those of us who, the moment a meeting starts, can't wait to run up to the whiteboard and start very enthusiastically drawing out pictures of what we think everyone is talking about. We're going to call us the black pen people because we're very confident in picking up our black pen and drawing very fast. Love doing it. There are those of us then who are sitting watching this other person up at the board, and we're kind of excited, but we don't think we can draw very well. But we do have an idea of something that could be added to the picture. And so we say, I can't draw, but can I add something to your picture? And we are called the yellow pen people. I call us that because we don't feel super confident to run up to the board and draw, but we feel very confident to add something into someone else's picture. And then there's a third group of us who are the people who are kind of sitting back at the back, maybe leaning back, maybe a little bit disgusted by all of this, thinking, this is silly. Look at those people up there at the whiteboard. They are so grossly oversimplifying the problem with their silly little pictures that they're probably making it even worse. Well, we are called the red pen people because we like to mark up someone else's work and say, no, don't think so. We red pen people really are the people who have the greatest grasp of all the details and all the facts, and it's very difficult for us to watch things being oversimplified or perceived to be oversimplified in the way that they tend to be drawn on the board. So this is the spectrum. All of us at different times and in different ways fall across this spectrum to varying degrees. And what we're going to do in order to see where we individually naturally probably start along this spectrum is by taking a little self-assessment test. And this is going to tell us whether our pen is black, our pen is yellow, or our pen is naturally red. So here's the way this test is going to work. What I'd like you to do is take a piece of paper, and I am going to show you a series of simple questions like this one. And question A, I'm in a brainstorming session in a conference room that has a whiteboard. So that's the scenario, and then I will present you with a series of 5 possible answers. What would you do if you were in that situation? So what I'd like you to do then is read through the 5 answers and pick the number that's the closest to the one you would do and write that number down on your piece of paper. So let's go ahead and start, and in fact, let's back up and do this question right from the beginning. Here we go. I'm in a brainstorming session in a conference room that has a whiteboard. The first thing that I would do is, and so what I'd like you to do is take a moment, pause the video if you need to, read through the 5 answers, pick the one that's best for you, and write that down on your piece of paper. Would I go to the whiteboard and start drawing circles? Would I go to the board and start writing lists? Would I add something to a picture that's already up there? Would I say, forget this, we've got work to do? Or would I just say, oh, come on, I hate brainstorming sessions? Write down your answer. Next question. Someone hands me a pen and asks me to sketch out a particular idea. What do I do? Ask for more pens in all kinds of colors? Do I just start sketching? Do I say, I can't draw but, and draw something anyway? Do I start writing words and drawing boxes? Do I put the pen down and start talking? Pick which is best for you, closest to what you would do, and write down that number. We've got a few more to go. Okay, someone hands me a complicated spreadsheet and asks me to look it over. What do I do? Do I glaze over and hope it will go away? Do I just flip through and see what just kind of pops up? Do I read across the column headers and then down through the categories? Do I look for common data results across rows? Do I instantly see that OPEX variance to budget is down in Q2? Write down the number of which is the most appropriate for you. A couple more to go. While traveling home from a conference, I meet an acquaintance at the airport cafe, someone I met at the conference, and they say, "Wait a minute, I remember you from the conference. What was your name? What is it that you do?" How do I explain my job to someone in an airport cafe? Do I grab a napkin and ask for a pen? Do I build an org chart with packs of sugar? Do I pull a PowerPoint page out of my bag, start explaining it? Do I say, "Whoa, this takes a while. I better buy a round"? Or do I just stop talking about that and talk about something more interesting? Which is the one that's closest to what you would do? And the last one, and this is a conceptual leap because none of us have ever been here, but we can imagine what it might be like. I'm an astronaut floating in space. The first thing that I do is do I lose myself in the view? Hey, do I pull out my camera, start snapping pictures? Do I start describing what I see? Do I check my suit instruments, make sure everything's good? Do I report status back to mission control? Write down the number of what you would do. Okay, so here's what I'd like you to do now. Add up your numbers. And let's see where we all end up. If you scored between a 5 and a 9, we're going to say that from the basis of this assessment, you initially qualify as a black pen person. If you scored from 10 to 15 points, we're going to say you initially qualified as a yellow pen person. And if you scored from 16 to 25 points, we're going to say that you are initially a red pen person. Now, there are a couple of things to take away from this test. Number one is that it's not a perfect test. Number two, though, what it does show us is something interesting, because I can tell you from my own experience, having given this test more than 500 times now around the world to every kind of industry, organization, level of seniority, type of person that you can imagine, you always see the same aggregate result. You always see the following. We get a kind of a bell curve distribution in any audience. About 25% of the people in any audience identify themselves using this test as a black pen person. About 50% identify themselves as a yellow pen person, and about 25% identify themselves as a red pen person, taking the same test that you just did 500 times with no changes whatsoever. So it's interesting, where do you fit along this? This isn't really a valid test of how do you draw or how do you think. It's more a test to show the spectrum of ways in which we approach problem solving differently, and visual problem solving in particular differently. But let me tell you the most fascinating part about this test of all. So as I say, 500 times, you always end up with a bell curve distribution of some sort, and it often has a little bit of variation. It might go a little bit like this, or it might be that there's fewer black pen people in a particular audience and a little bit more red pen people, with one exception. One time I had an opportunity to give this test to the NEA, and this isn't to single out teachers, but the National Education Association. And this is non-validated because this only happened once. I had about 150 teachers, elementary school teachers, and academic administrators in the room. We took the same test that you just took. And you want to know what happened? Every single person scored themselves as a red pen person. 100%. 100% of our teachers and academic administrators in that one instance identified themselves as a as a red pen person. Identified themselves as a red pen person. And what does this tell us? If this is valid, if this tells us anything at all, it tells us that at least 2/3 of kids who are going into elementary school are not being taught initially in the way that most clearly aligns with the way they prefer to solve problems. And it is any wonder in this particular way where we might say that our school system is failing us. Is it any wonder? We don't teach to yellow pen people and we don't teach to black pen people. This is, I don't want to stretch the point too much. I loved talking with the NEA and I love working with teachers. But what I do want to emphasize is there is something going on about how we approach teaching that does absolutely not take into consideration different working and thinking styles, people who love to draw and people who are reasonably good at drawing and want to think about making changes to someone else's picture. So I think that's kind of an interesting takeaway and gives us all something to think about as we start to become better visual problem solvers ourselves. Okay, we'll erase all that. The other way I find this test to be useful is it helps us guide ourselves in thinking about how can we use the tools and rules of the Napkin Academy. Because I do believe that visual problem solving and visual thinking is something that's going to help all of us, regardless of where we sit across this spectrum, but at the same time recognizing that the same tools are not necessarily going to be as appealing to everybody. So here's the takeaway I have from this. If you identified yourself as a black pen person, I think that in the Napkin Academy, the lessons that you might want to start with are the lessons that relate to something I call the 6x6 rule. Because what the 6x6 rule does is it tells us how to take our drawings that we already know how to make and use them to create a drawing of any problem right away. How can we clarify any problem by using our pictures? If we had identified ourselves as a yellow pen person, I think that the lessons we might want to start with are the lessons related to something called the squid. What the squid is a way of dividing up any idea into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different kinds of simple pictures. So if we have a good idea in mind, but we're uncomfortable with drawing, what the squid will tell us to do is say, okay, just draw a picture that looks like this, and your idea will start to become very, very clear. If we had identified ourselves as a red pen person, I don't want anybody to get discouraged. The fact is, red pen people we really are the people who have the greatest grasp of all of the facts and all of the details. And we are absolutely necessary to this entire group to make sure that simple pictures actually become truthful and effective. So if we're a red pen person, the lessons that I think might be most appropriate and interesting to start with, first off, would be the simple lessons on how to draw. Because what I often find is for many people who do not like visual problem solving is it's because they think they can't draw. So there are some simple lessons in just basically how to draw. But a second point to start or to begin to look at the lessons, I think, would be the lessons that are around the visual MBA. Now, these are a set of lessons that take all of these pictures and make them very specifically applicable to very, hardcore business challenges. And I think that being able to see how that could work and how some hard business decisions can be clarified through our simple pictures is a great place for red pen people to start their way in to the Napkin Academy. So in the end, I would recommend that everybody take all the lessons, because they will teach us everything from how to draw, big picture thinking, through some tools that help us pick which picture would be best to draw, through some pictures that help us understand how we can break down any problem into its visual components. Quick summary then of what we've learned in this one with our pen color test is that all of us are not the same when it comes to visual problem solving. Some of us love drawing. Some of us, well, are maybe a little bit less certain about drawing, and some of us are very much uncertain about drawing at all. Doesn't matter, because we've got tools and rules that can help all of us become much better visual problem solvers very, very easily.